good afternoon. It's another beautiful day and, of course, an amazing time to be in front of your screen. My name is Tochi and you are welcome to the Medley Show. Today is a very special day because we're going to be celebrating the Nigerian workers. Yes, it is May Day special. Of course, we should have brought you this edition last week, but of course, you know, there are so many activities going on in celebration of the Nigerian worker, but every worker in Nigeria deserves their special time, which is why we're going to dedicate this 1 hour to celebrate the Nigerian worker. And we do have some very special guests in the studio, but you'll get to meet them in a moment. I did promise you very interesting guests. Time now for you to meet my guests. I have two very interesting women in the studio. First up, I have Mrs. Chinyere Ashade. She's a former director of programs operations at the Voice of Nigeria, retired. You're welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
It's good to have you join us today.
It's my pleasure.
I'm personally excited to have you here today because I don't want to tell our story, but we do go way back. Back in 2010, 2011, 2009, 2010, yeah. It's good to see you again, ma'am.
It is. Thank
also
you.
in the studio is Aderele Dimle. She's immediate past chairman, Association of Proprietors of Private Schools, Agigi chapter. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
You do have a school in Lagos?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's good to have you both on the show today.
Thank you.
So today we're celebrating workers and you guys are amazing, myself inclusive, because I am a Nigerian worker and I've been now for at least 14 years. Not as much as you have been, but I also get to be celebrated myself. So let's talk about the Nigerian worker. You are retired. You retired this year in March.
Yes, I did.
How does it feel to be retired, first of all?
Well,
you spent
how does it feel?
almost 34 years in the system.
34 years and 9 months.
Okay, so
exactly.
How does it feel to be retired?
Well, you know, because of COVID, we had somehow gotten used to working from home and all that. So it's a slight transition because thereafter, and for one reason or the other, I had to spend some time at home and all that. So it's not really much different. There's always something to do. That you can't be idle. Okay. So I'm yet to really
get used to
the fact. It's just 2 months. I'm yet to get used to the fact that I'm retired.
But you're getting enough rest.
Oh, I don't think so.
Oh, really? I mean, after 34 years, I should think that, you wake up in the morning and you're not jumping and trying to get ready to run to the office. You're not calling this person to make sure their script is ready. You're not trying to get ready to get on air and all of that. I mean, it's a breath of fresh air.
As I said, COVID has introduced us to working online.
Okay.
So there's always something to attend to here or there, whatever it is. So we're busy 24/7.
Okay, that's good to know. So let's talk about your time in the public sector. I mean, you spent almost 35 years, 34 years and 9 months. Let's talk about your time
33 years.
33 years and 9 months.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your time in the sister. Share a bit of your experience with us from when you started up until you retired.
Okay.
Long story, I'm sure, but we're going to make it short.
Of course, I'll summarize. But the interesting part, okay, so I joined Voice of Nigeria the 26th, I think, of June, 1990, on a salary of, I think, was it about 200 and something naira?
Wow.
Yes, that's the interesting part.
200 and?
Between 200 and 300 naira. That was my salary. I remember very well because shortly after I got there, my mom passed, and we're thinking. And the first thing I did, I had 100 naira saved in my UBA account. So I quickly went and brought up the 100 naira and said, "This is my contribution." And my uncles and aunties were all looking at me and they laughed. But for me, that was a whole lot of money then.
Yeah. It was a whole lot of money.
So that was how we started, and it's gone on and on and on. Of course, now we're getting a new minimum wage. I remember when we first started getting something close to 1,000 and something, was like, oh, so one can earn as much as this. And but of course, times were changing. The situation warranted us to earn more. So there was always something to put that money to, to use. So, but apart from that, how would I say it? It was an interesting thing. The civil service has a structure, which we had in Voice of Nigeria. So you knew where you were meant to be after every period of years.
Yeah.
There was after 3 years, 4 years, you go for promotion, you move to the next level. I sailed through smoothly, relatively. There was a glitch somewhere along the line, but we went through, the promotions were held as it went due, we moved up and all of that, and till I got to my final promotion and became a director. So
that's good.
it's been
Anyone
okay.
who gets a director, I mean, you've gotten to the peak of where you should get to.
It was just the grace of God anyway. Funny enough, some people, when they go into the civil service or any organization, they probably had that at the back of their mind where they wanted to get to. But I went in as a presenter.
Okay.
So, and I was just passionate about presentation.
Yeah.
I didn't even have, and I saw so many people ahead of me, so I wasn't even thinking about all those heights,
Yeah.
I did have 1 or 2 attempts at leaving the civil service at a point where I thought it was boring, and I thought there was more fun
in the
private sector. But I dashed in and dashed back, and I just said, let me just stay here. When I saw the reality out there, I said, let me stay here where there's a structure that, and as things went on, especially when IPIS came on board, so you were certain that you were getting your salary. But even before IPIS, for us in Voice of Nigeria, each department, each organization had their votes with the ministry there. So we hardly had that challenge with salary to a large extent. We hardly had that even. But then, of course, with IPIS, I mean, it was a guaranteed thing. So why would anybody, unless, of course, you had some things that you were projecting towards that would want to run out of the civil service, the public sector, that's for me. That's for me.
So Miss Adenrele, she said something. She said she ran out and came back a few times because she thought it was more fun out there. Is it more fun in the private sector? Because you've never been in the public service.
Yeah, I haven't. And when she just mentioned that, I got interested that, okay, so which means all what we're thinking about is actually right all along anyways. So picking up from where she actually said, I've never worked in the public sector. I've always been in the private. And what I do usually is I run a nursery and primary school, and I started with passion. I remember I just wanted children to be around me.
Did you start from teaching, or you went straight to being a school?
No, yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was actually a daycare.
Okay.
I just wanted children around me. I went for the Montessori method of education. I went for the Montessori training, and I couldn't just sit. I couldn't just wait. I had to just put back into the society, and that propelled me to just start something small, right in the house there. And I was just with children, and I focused on that for a few years before, and I went into the nursery proper, then went into the primary, and I've actually I don't want to do any other thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did mention that when you started working with Shadi, that it was about between 200 to 300 naira. When I started working, it was about I think about 45,000. That was the salary I started on. Yeah, it has changed between that time and now. But I just want to ask something. I want to get your perspective on what you think the current state of living wages of the Nigerian worker. I mean, do you think workers are adequately compensated for the work that they do?
The truth be told, workers will never. It's hardly possible to say that workers will ever be adequately compensated. We see how times are changing.
Yeah.
We see how things are getting tighter by the moment. So, just like I said, a lot of us that have stayed within the public sector, for instance, apart from whether some probably say they have nowhere else to go, a lot of us in the media where I was, it's about passion. There were people who came before me, there were people who came with me, and they all ran out for the greener pastures.
Greener pastures.
I know 1 or 2 that went and came back and begged to come back. Some even came back and were absorbed on a lower level.
Oh, wow.
They couldn't get back to, where they had, the point at which they left, because they had gone for so long, and the rules, whatever the public sector rules are, so they couldn't be absorbed. So they lost some seniority. They had to drop some stuff like that. So it's yes, we want to. I think the most important thing is the other things that need to be put in place to make life bearable for the worker. To what extent? And we must admit also that the public sector is bloated. So there's a whole lot that government pays annually on workers, emoluments. And it's really largely not sustainable. There are a whole lot of things being said about wanting to merge agencies and all of that. It's just because of the large wage fee that is becoming unbearable for government. So now you're talking about, but what we're saying is that, okay, so now, whatever we have, even if we have to make do with that, let other things be put in place that will make life bearable for us also.
So I want to hear what improvements you think should be made.
Oh, for instance, you would wish that government could come and do some kind of regulation of the cost of accommodation. For instance, you know what it's like here in Abuja. And you come in and it's like you pay or you leave. And you look at some of these houses, why do we have to pay so much? And as soon as they hear that there's a hike in one price, the hike goes all everywhere, overboard, So at times we wish that there could be some kind of regulation, government having a way of controlling some of these prices so that it doesn't get out of bounds.
You're talking about housing now.
Not only housing, transport,
food,
even the transport, even the food, even in the market, everything, there has to be some kind of control because everything is just skyrocketing, it's getting out of control. And that's where the problem lies.
That's largely a spin-off from the way the economy is at the moment.
It's a cyclical thing, that's just it. And if it could be snipped somewhere, it possibly will be controlled. But then I'm not an economist, so I don't have. Let me not go.
You don't have all the answers.
Yes, but on the way from a layman's point of view, we would just wish that, for instance, public transport could be controlled. In those days when we had all the buses, the government provided vehicles and all of that, so it kind of helped, and people wouldn't mind staying at the bus stop to get into those buses. We used to call them then the El Rufai buses, if you remember, here in Abuja.
I remember.
And I know they had them. I don't know how far the BRT is functional in Lagos. Those buses helped because at least they were much more bearable than the other transport, the private one. Yes. So these are some of the things that we really would have loved some level of control over.
Well, I want to know from your experience, how many years have you run your school?
Like 25.
25 years. And you've had several workers pass on the fantastic. So let's talk about how it's obtainable in the private sector.
Okay, thank you very much. I will still focus on education.
Which is your specialty.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what we want government to actually do or to realize is that the private educators, are actually not their rivals, that we are not in competition with the public.
Does it work that way, though?
Yeah, that's how we the private educators, start saying things because of the way it's been operational, and that they should see us as stakeholders, that what we just do is to contribute our own, to help government bring out and take out children off the streets. That is our own contribution to the Nigerian economy as a whole, and that so that most of the incentives that the public educators, public schools, enjoy.
Private want to get that as well?
No, let me get there. No, not that. No, I'll get there. But because we are stakeholders, we are supporting them. We are helping. We are helping because they can't absorb all these children. They can't. And that is why they are private schools. I'm not talking in terms of maybe the ones that charge so high and all that. Even the ones that are in the suburbs. The fact that a child can leave the corner of his or her house and get a school somewhere that he or she can be taught, that particular sector is helping the government. So all in all, if there is a structure, itself, most of these things we are talking about won't even be an issue. Government will be able to take, to know when to come into the private sector in terms of education to assist and give the necessary support. Instead of seeing the private schools as agents where they can actually, as another source of income.
I do agree that the collaboration between the private and public sector would definitely work for the greater good of the nation. But I also want to know what probably gave rise to that thought that it's a competition between the public and the private, because I don't see it that way. So I really want to know where that's...
Yeah, why it's coming from is because, like, everything the private sector is doing, before you know the public, they want to take it into the public schools, which is okay. But when it comes to giving incentives, support, you know, and other things for us to also to cushion the effects of what is going on in the economy, because at the end of the day, look at what she has said. I will take back that, you know, she went to the private sector, she went out, but there wasn't that guarantee, you know, for her, so she had to go back into the public sector again, because there's that comfort, security.
Yeah, because I was going to use the word security.
There's more security in the public sector, and that's what happens even in education. Like in education, especially, let me put Lagos, where my school has been operational. We have so many agencies, so many government agencies that the day of resumption, they are coming to your school. They want you to do this, they want you to do that. In as much as we appreciate it because they are regulating us to get to give the best.
Yeah,
but
there has to, I believe there has to be a structure.
Yeah, but it's not properly followed. That's what we're saying.
Okay.
That's what we want it to be properly followed. Let me know that when you come to my school and you're asking me to put this in place, let the same thing to be obtainable even in the public school.
Okay.
Yes. Don't make it look as if, okay, we are not doing this, we are not doing that, we are not doing this and that. But in the public this thing, we don't even have it.
Okay.
You know.
So we're going to get back to this conversation, but right now let's take some highlights from the Parts May Day celebration. When we come back, the conversation will continue in the studio. Stay with us.
Let's move. Walk faster. Let's walk faster.
Without considering the people's needs, governance fails. Government must align with the people's interests, no self-serving agenda. We demand results, not empty promises. It is time to prioritize the welfare of Nigerians above all else. It is worrying for us in the trade union movement that a state which is supposed to be the custodian of our laws is leading a defiance of its own institutions and agreements read through social dialogue, which Mr. President had pledged was going to be a driving force of his presidency during his inaugural speech here in Ego Square.
We demand action on our refineries. Promises remain unfulfilled, while operational ones in the private sector fail to ease the people's suffering. There is suspicion of sabotage to profit from importing at the expense of our economy. The recent refining agreement lacks transparency, echoing past exploitation in other sectors.
Today being the first May Day under this administration, it again reminds us of the great sacrifices made by the working class towards enthronement of dignity of labor, generation of wealth, and to ensure safe working environments, which are key to national growth and development. Fellow comrades, as we gather here under the theme People First, we are reminded of the fundamental principle that must guide our actions and policies, which is the prioritization of the welfare and well-being of our people. Our gathering today, therefore, is a testament of our firm commitment to placing the needs and aspirations of our workers at the forefront of our national agenda.
I do not take for granted the understanding, patience, commitment, and support you have shown throughout the implementation of this government's policies and programs aimed at positively transforming our great nation. Your contributions and support have played a significant role in our efforts to rescue the economy since we came on board. Fellow comrades, your choice of the theme People First for this year's May Day celebration is both instructive and commendable.
Industrial union leaders, get ready at your places. Let's take the march past. The police band are going to play. We are going to begin in the order I am going to be rolling you out.
Very fast. Nigerian Union of Please hold on, please. Bring us a hold on. Bring us value to the country through your various services. Some of them are retired, but not tired. They have designed a very technical, strength towards added value to the welfare need of the citizens at the big call.
Our Vice President is a gallant man, taking the salute alongside the National President.
This is still the Medley Show. Those were some highlights from the past media celebration. And of course, I still have in the studio Mrs. Chinyere Ashadi and Mrs. Adinrili Dimle, who are Nigerian workers, both from the public and the private sector.
Retired.
Retired, okay. I won't forget that again, retired. Okay, so a bit of what was said, I mean, a lot was said. A lot of people made comments at the media celebration, but the NLC president did criticize the increment. I mean, they did ask for some, they did ask for something, for some level of increment, but they just got between 25 to 35%. And he did criticize that that isn't enough. And you have mentioned earlier that that there's so much the government has to pay for, that they just can't bear all the wages. Again, you are retired, like you said. But do you think that is good? Are you saying that it's okay, that what the government is giving is okay compared to what they are asking for, or what we are asking for?
You get it. Well, I did mention that we can never get enough, because we know what the economy is going through right now. It's reality.com.
Right.
That's just it. So, and I did say just before we went on the break that what would be the basic level that would be comfortable? Between 70 and 100.
Okay. Not what they're asking for.
Not what, so that if we really want to be sincere, if we want to meet our regular needs, okay, there's some power increases here and there.
Yes.
Fuel is still rising, and I mean, there's so many things to contend with. Children have to go to school. School fees are going up. I'm sure Madam is thinking of how to increase the school fees, if not now, by the next session. Next session, school fees will go up.
That's the reason why they're asking for an increment.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that these are things that need to be regulated. These are areas that we need government to come in and step in and help us, so that it will be bearable. Because really, unless of course they're going to lay off, and there have been times when, in the past, I remember when I was in service, on 2 occasions, the first one was called downsizing, the next one was called right-sizing. These were 2 different times when staff were laid off. It was all about trying to see how they could curtail, to manage the workforce, the load that they had, they were carrying, government was carrying. Now government can't try that. That was even, I think it was mostly during the military era. So it was easily done then. But during the political era, you can't do that. It's risky for the political, the government in power to do that. They're talking about mergers. It's still a struggle. You understand? So there's so many things. But let's agree that they have this burden of a whole lot of salaries to pay.
Okay.
Now, how can it be handled? So that, okay, we can't pay as much as you want, but we'll make life bearable. That's all that's what I'm still, that's what I'm just still saying, that's the only way we can get by. But if you're thinking that government is going to pay you what you want, it can't. And again, remember that once the money goes up, those things will, that's why I said it's
Which
just.
is true.
So it's just regulate.
That's the Nigerian way.
Fine.
The salary goes up.
So it's not about the salary increase.
It's just been said.
Yes.
It hasn't even gone up yet.
You've not received it.
Yes, things are going to go up.
You will see what happen. So that's just so we have to start regulating these things. There have to be some commissions, but I don't know. But government has to sit down and think, how can we balance this thing up So it will really make sense. Otherwise, even this increase won't make sense.
So let's talk about job satisfaction. When you were in the civil service, did you have that?
Well, if you find yourself in a vocation that's something you're passionate about, then you will have the job satisfaction no matter what.
So it's not a question of factors that help you?
Even before I went into school, I had forayed into the media.
Okay.
So it had been something I was always bound to do. Even in the family, they knew that I was going to be a broadcaster somehow. So I found myself there. I got in and I started. And so the joy I had, there were times because before I came to Abuja, Voice of Nigeria, we had our head office there in Lagos, radio house, broadcasting house there in Ikoyi. And there were times when, because of one challenge or the other, we had to sleep in the office, but we didn't mind it. We were not bothered about it. We loved doing it because we loved our job. And those that didn't like doing it,
They left.
Well, some of them left, but many of us, we just loved it. I'm being very frank with you. And
I'm laughing
through.
because you said back in the day you didn't mind because you loved your job. So it just makes me feel like right now that we love our job, but right now that
I say that I always tell my junior colleagues, I told them when I say, you guys don't know anything. That I don't know the kind of, and that, you see, that's another policy. The way people are brought in, after a while, people were not, the way I got my job, I had gone there, I had done the audition, and I was at home, and I was called to come, and that I had been given a job and all of that, and I went there. It's through the normal process that I did the interview. But today, people are just given letters to come and take a job. We know that's the reality, anotherreality.com. So some people, I remember somebody employed in Voice of Nigeria who didn't know what Voice of Nigeria was all about.
Wow.
Yes, she had never heard of Voice of Nigeria, but she just got a job there. How do you expect her to be passionate about something she doesn't even know jack about? And of course, she didn't last. She didn't last. I don't know how many months she lasted. And fortunately, her connections were able to get her somewhere else where she was more comfortable. Of course, she had taken somebody else's position and all of that. So, for those of us that are there for what we want to do, this is what we went to school to study, or this is what we have a passion for, this is what we see as a vocation, that job satisfaction will be there. And that's why many of us are still there, whether the living wage is making us live or not, somehow we are alive.
So you're saying job satisfaction is majorly a question of passion.
Oh, yes, yes.
So there aren't factors that, okay, but this
in
is
the private sector, they have a lot of money. No, in the private sector, they get a lot of money. They get what they want to be paid. So it's easier for them.
So is it true? No, I totally agree with her.
No, that's actually not true. Like it still depends on the kind of private sector, whatever
the
it
area,
is.
The industry.
Yeah, so if I'm still going to talk about education, it still has its own categories as well. But like what she rightly said, the passion comes in as well. You can't run a school when you're not passionate about it, especially after COVID. Most schools actually closed down, shut down, because they couldn't just even continue. It wasn't just bearable anymore. Then most teachers, if not all, left some schools because during the COVID-19 they got alternative source of income, and they now found that, oh, why should I actually suffer myself, laboring and all that? Those who do not have the passion for the job actually left. They never came back into the teaching profession. Some shut the schools, then with the jackpot syndrome. With the jackpot syndrome, some actually sold their schools to travel abroad and all sorts. So it's still the same thing, that when you are passionate about whatever it is you're doing, you'll be able to go through.
It's not a question of money anymore.
No, yeah, it gets to that stage. Then not that it's not about money, but you weather whatever challenges comes your way because you are still holding on to that passion. I love what I'm doing. I enjoy it, and it's going to get better, and it's going to get better. We have some teachers too. Once they just come in, the next minute they're off. They can't stay. Some they won't even resign. They just go. While some will actually just tell them, oh, I want to just spend 3 months or something. Or some will not just fit in at all. So I think it depends on what made you actually to go into whatever it is you are
doing. So I do agree with you when you said that job satisfaction is majorly a question of passion for the job. But we have what we have now. So are we saying that there aren't factors that could be put in place or that could be worked out to also help the people we have in the system at the moment have job satisfaction? I mean, they may not be as passionate as you were when you entered the system, but they are in the system now, and something can make them remain. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, sure. Well, if we talk about the work environment, tools of trade, things that help you do your job, get your job done, and that includes adequate power supply. I remember there was a neighbor the other day had to stay at home because for some time they had a challenge with their power, so they were all sent to go and work from home. Now, you can imagine that it was like things were kind of strained for them because they were not able to perform as much as they probably would have wanted to if they had been in the office. So these are some of the things. Yes, the work environment need to be okay, interpersonal relationship with your colleagues and all of that. Yeah, I know we still get back to the issue of the salary. Apart from that, okay, for instance, in the media where we are, we need to have your shift vehicles. I remember in those days when we were in Lagos, when we opened the station at around 5:30 a.m. or so, and the vehicle comes, it starts going around to pick people from around 3 a.m. Things were safe then, you know, and they would come around, but there was a shift vehicle that would come around all over Lagos and bring us to the office. So by 5:30 we must be there. The station gets on, you know. So those are things.
Yeah, I think that still happens.
Fine, yeah, fine. So, but if, for instance, you have to struggle yourself to get to the office, then that's also frustrating because you're paying more, you're spending more on transport, and of course the security there. I do know that some of my colleagues have had problems on their way to work when, for one reason or the other, beyond our control anyway, the vehicles were down. Those are also realities. The vehicles were down and you had to come to work anyway. And maybe they were robbed on the way and stuff like that. It happens. These are things that workers go through. Whether you're in the media or anywhere, it could happen.
It could happen.
It could happen. So these are things that happen. Some organizations have transit camps where people stay overnight if they have to work and stuff like that. So I think, of course, if things like that are in place, that
whether
also,
you're passionate, your passion could grow in the course of the job.
It will cushion the effect of because you see, like I said, the most important thing is that you still have some level of comfort and some extra cash on you. So,
okay. So there's this debate that I've heard so many times, like the strength of the public sector over the private sector, the strength of the private sector, over the public sector. Though I think a lot of times they say it in terms of money or comfort, like you rightly pointed out, and provision of work tools and all of that. So in your opinion, do you think the private sector really has an upper hand over the public sector?
You know, she talked about different categories. There are different grades, there are different levels. So it depends
I'm talking in terms of job security, career opportunities.
It's still the same thing. It depends on the particular sector of the private sector you find yourself. Okay. For instance, talking about even like her school. Okay, let me stick to the media. Yeah. We have private media organizations. And I remember when some of them were opened, like I said, I tried running to one and
you came back.
Cricket rod because I saw the red flag immediately. And later when I spoke with some of my colleagues who had gone earlier, they'll talk about months without getting paid. Because yes, they talk about months without getting their salaries. And so they have to like go out and hustle and, you know, do one thing or the other to be able to take care of themselves all the same. It's almost like what happens in banks. Maybe they're given some kind of, targets to get some publicity, so get some programs, get some sponsors and all that. If you can get sponsorship for your program, fine. You get your percentage and all of that. So that's part of what happened in the private sector. There's some that have been able to break even and things seem to be quite stable. They are fortunate, just like would have happened in the schools too. So it's neither here nor there. It just depends on where you're fortunate to find yourself. If you get yourself in a place that's really juicy, fine, it might be okay. And that's why I just decided to stay put.
So yours is just, you can't deal with all the stress out there. Just stay with somewhere you're safe, where you think you're safe.
It's not as if I didn't like what I was doing. And the uncertainty, some people have shock absorbers. I didn't have that kind. I wasn't going to live on uncertainty. So I said, let me stay where there's relative certainty. It's not as if what I was doing wasn't okay. It's the same thing I'm going to do there. It's just that, like you said, maybe the pay was supposed to be better, maybe greater exposure, maybe some more opportunities. But then you find out that in such places again, I'm sure Madam can also attest to that, there's a lot of politics. There's a lot of man eats man there.
And the private now?
Yes, in the private sector. Whereas in the public sector, where we are, you can't, even if you don't like, even
the reverse of the case.
Even if we don't like ourselves, I can't get you out of the place.
True.
We will be there till we all retire. Yes. And we'll be going our different ways, if anything like that. But in the public sector, somebody could go and whisper to the Oga.
And then private.
And that guy, in the private sector, somebody will go and whisper to the Oga, and that person is out without knowing what he did wrong or what she did wrong. But that can happen in the public sector. It's not easy to sack anybody. So those are some of the things that will probably, for me, public sector is always is more secure. I would always say that. It may not have, and with some of the organizations, they've also begun to catch up with what's happening in the private sector, and also expanding their coast to. And then, of course, with the onslaught, I would use that, of the social media networks, the social media handles. Virtually everyone, whether public or private, we all had to go into that. So we're selling ourselves in a different way.
True.
So it's giving us, for instance, in the media, so we're at par.
Okay. So let me hear from Mrs. Odenrele. Do you think that assumption is true?
Still, for job security, I think it's more in the public sector when it comes to the teaching profession. Because, don't forget, I will keep reiterating it, that it depends on where you're coming from and how the structure of that particular education sector is all about, So you can get to see the owner of the school, and sometimes you might not even get to see the owner of the school. You deal with the head of schools and all that. Yeah. So it still boils down to whatever it is you're doing and the structure of the workplace where you find yourself. And that is basically what is actually obtainable.
So in all these things, whether it's the private or the public sector, there are definitely challenges that are common to the Nigerian worker. Yeah. So that's what I want us to talk about. Let me start with Mr. Shadi. What are some of these challenges that you think are very common to any worker in Nigeria, private or public, and how do you think we can, we're still here, we're still working, but those challenges are still there?
Well, the major challenge still boils down to finance.
Is it though? Is that the only thing though?
To a large extent, because when you can't proudly go home, or when before it gets to the end of the month, you're in debt. I'm sure a lot of people are taking all kinds of loans. They're into co-thrift. They're into ajo, esusu. Just to get something at a particular time that they can throw into something. So that's a major. I think that's still I think if you ask any worker now, that's still the basic challenge. They wish they could have more on the table. They wish they could have better meals. They wish they could do more and all of that. And that is why, that's the basis of the Jackpot thing now. It's work they're going, that's what they're going out there to do. So then apart from that, well, promotion, as far as I'm concerned, I think promotions are going relatively well. Again, infrastructure, like we said, tools of trade, some of them may be lacking depending. For instance, for us as a government agency, it depends on what government gives us. Voice of Nigeria, for instance, was purely government funded. NTA, you're commercial, so you have some extras coming in from here and there. But for Voice of Nigeria, we had virtually nothing, so we just depend on what government gives us. And what government gives us goes on so many things, not just the needs of the worker. They're not paying our salaries, that's IPIS, that's handled, yes, but there's so many other things, the running costs on a day-to-day basis, and what we get, just kind of knowing that the power supply is not regular. We're buying diesel.
That's a common challenge everywhere.
That's what I'm saying, it's a common challenge. So, and meanwhile, we have our claims. Maybe you went out on an assignment and you paid your way there, and you come and you fill the form to get your claims back, and your claims are lying there till you retire. You're smiling because you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Good.
Because I still have some unclaimed claims about from Voice of the, from my days in Voice of the.
Hello, I'm retired, but I still have some claims that I will say it. No, but it's reality, and we can't blame anyone because they will tell you this is what we got. I retired as a director, so we were at the meetings. I was attending management meetings, so we know what comes in. And we see what, how the knife is going to go in and how it's going to be cut here and there. So what is left to pay the staff claims? It's limited. So that's just that's a major challenge. So overheads and capital, which come from the government for us, like I said, where would they beef them up from? They have a whole lot of staff wages to pay. It's
a whole lot.
Like I said, it's a cyclical thing. It's but it's not all gloomy. I think it can be managed. Of course,
it's not all gloomy.
I think it can be managed, but we just need to sit down and tell ourselves some truths here and there. We need to tell ourselves some truths here and there, and cut some things here and there. And if some things can be cut here and there, and some adjustments can be made here and there, things will begin to work.
So who's doing the cutting? Who's making the adjustments? The government or the workers? Because everyone has to tell themselves the truth, both the government and the
So you want me to tell you the truth? Well, I'm retired now, so I can say it. But we know that yes, government needs to cut some costs here and there. The politicians also need to help us cut some costs here and there. And some of these costs, by the time some of these costs are cut and are recouped into the national, whatever it is, then that money can go around.
I would say if government can still help, reduce some of the multiple taxations with the school owners' fees, then it could help to also help us to have a better package also for our own teaching staff. And also generally, there's nothing bad in if everybody can...
multiple taxations from the government to the private schools?
Yeah, we pay so much. Different kind of levies. We pay annual dues, we pay direct assessment, we pay for the payee, which is a normal thing. We pay for radio television, we pay fire brigade certificate, we pay all sorts of government agencies, and that's why I was saying that we want government to see the private educators as partners, not as maybe another source of income or revenue generating something, because those are some of the challenges. So this also affects the school owners that they can hardly do much. Though some people will argue that it's a private school, they charge so much.
Yeah, because I was going to mention that.
But like I said, like look in the city of Abuja, how many schools do we actually have? But when you go into the suburbs, you find that so many schools, and how much can they even charge? How much
there
can
are
they charge?
Schools in the city of Abuja a lot. Because
a lot,
the reason why I agree with the narrative that the private schools charge so much. I mean, I saw something on social media a few days ago.
42 million?
No. A lady posted a list of what she had to pay for her child in kindergarten. And it came up to 970-something-thousand.
Those are big people.
So there are schools that pay that much. This is kindergarten, not even primary or secondary.
And some schools pay
9,000. Private schools?
Yes, 10,000, 15,000. They're all over in Lagos. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That so it depends on which area you go into, and what is affordable. Even in Agege, Lagos, we can hardly charge 50,000 naira as school fees per term. I am not joking. Yes, and then you find out with all this, then the overhead cost, now comes in. So there's so much that we still want the government to actually do to support the in education. That's why I don't want to say private sector in general, in education, So we can also benefit some of these incentives, let me put it that way, like even loan. They can negotiate with banks to reduce the percentage on the interest. They can talk to even grants. We don't get grants. It still goes to the public schools. The private sectors, the low ones, let me put it that way. I wouldn't know about the big schools that charge 42 million, but the basic, the most common, the popular ones, yes, the popular ones who are actually doing this so much, because the basic, we are talking of basic. Let this child just get education, We're not talking of the cosmetics attached to education. We are talking of the basic education, you know,
that
every child needs and deserves, you know. So at least with that one, we don't get grants. So we want government to look into that as well.
Okay.
The teachers too, you know, they can give subsidized laptops and all those things at affordable prices for the teachers to be able to afford. So much of capacity development as well is needed even in the private education too.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's much said, but let's take a quick break now. We'll take a quick music break, but when we come back, the conversation continues on The Medley Show. Stay with us.
Woke up one Sunday morning, told my daddy I'm leaving home. Going off to the city tomorrow, even though I don't know where to go. And Daddy says, son, don't be a fool, 'cause life in the city is unbelievable. You could get broken, no, you're just a little boy, and you may never find your way. And I said, I know I could get lost. I know I could get broken. Forgive me, Father, but I gotta take a chance. Oh, I'm already gone, so just pray for me. For me, pray I find my way. Oh, forgive me, Father, but I gotta take a chance. Oh, I'm already gone, so just pray for me. Pray I find my way. Oh, forgive me, Father, but I gotta take a chance. Oh, I'm already gone, so just pray for me. Hello, Daddy, how you doing? Hope Mama's doing okay. Been 4 years and 11 months now. Hello, it was true what you said to me. The life in the city is unbelievable. Had to struggle just to get by every day, and I could barely find my way. Ṣùgbọ́n mo mọ̀ pé mo lè ṣìnà. Mo rí pé ayé lè ṣòro. Forgive me, Father, but I gotta take a chance. Oh, I'm already gone, so just pray for me. Forgive me, Father, but I gotta take a chance. Oh, I'm already gone, so just pray for me.
Thank you so much, Dari Atalade, for that song. Prayers Pray For Me by Dari Atalade. This is still The Medley Show, and I still have Mrs. Chinera Shade in the studio and Mrs. Adinrele Dimla. And we are talking the plight of a Nigerian worker, whether private or public. So we have very limited time to go on the show, but I quickly want to talk to you, Mr. Shade. I did mention at the beginning of the program that I've known you from way back in 2010, and when I knew you, you were not on this wheelchair. So I just want to talk about if that happened in the course of the work and how your employers or the government was able to help in this situation.
Oh, beautiful. Well, yes, actually I was on annual leave and I went for a program, and on my way back I was involved in an accident, and then everything happened and this happened and all that. I was at home for almost a year, you know, going through rehabilitation and all that after the amputation. That was way back in in 2018.
Right.
And I got back to work. When I felt that I could somehow get back, I just wrote and told my DG then that I'd like to come back, but I would work from home for now, but at least let me know that I'm back somehow, and that it was permitted. I was allowed to work from home for some time, and of course then not long after that COVID came on anyway, so everybody was working from home.
Oh, yeah.
And along the line I got stronger and I got back to the office. By then I was the acting director, so I needed to be given an office. The office for my director initially then, because we had just moved to a new complex, was on the first floor. But my colleagues immediately, before I even got back, they had spoken to the DG. They said, we have to do a swap, because since she's the one that's going to go into that office, we need to bring it downstairs. So it was brought down. I was given somewhere on the ground floor with conveniences attached and everything. But to cut the whole story short, when all the supply of the executive swivel and all those chairs came in, I was told to tell my people to go to the store, that there was a motorized chair for me. That's this.
Oh,
so I got this
amazing.
from the office.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was part of it. Then, well, the ramping part was done partially, not as it ought to have been done. But one of my last tasks before I left the office, a memo I did to our new DG, Jibril Ndache, wonderful man, thank God for him. I wrote to, he said, what do I want? I said, it's not about me now, I'm out, but we need to ramp the frontage of this office so that people, like, if I'm coming on a visit, I can't be coming in through the way I was coming in before, which was an access route.
Okay.
It's not for visitors, it's for staff. So, and he said I should do that memo, which I did and submitted to him. And I want to believe that when things balance up financially, that ramping will be done in front. So for me, it's been fine. But I must tell you that it's not that way for a lot of people with disability in other offices. They faced a lot of persecution. They faced a lot of discrimination. They faced a whole lot of...
out their job.
Yes, they faced a lot of insults. I know very well there was a lady who, because she was on her prosthesis, and you know, these days they allow the iron to show. It's not in those days when everybody wants to cover.
Yeah.
And somebody told her that she's offended
By the way she looked?
by just the look of that prosthesis. And the young lady was distraught. She actually had to leave. She couldn't, it affected her emotionally. So these are things that go on in other places. I was just fortunate. I think maybe perhaps apart from my rapport with my colleagues, also maybe because I was at the higher level, I was on my way out. So,
Well, it's also good to know that in situations like, because I could tell a few stories that I know also about people who were who found themselves in situations like this in the course of the job, and the government did something in support of their current state. So
yeah.
I'm actually glad that you're telling that
Oh
story.
yes, I did.
Anyway,
I got that
we
support.
have to go. Time is fast spent. But before I let you go, Mr. Denredi, just the final words from you as to collaboration between the public and the private sector in the education, like you have said from the get-go. Yes.
Yeah. So what we want is for government to accept us as partners, and then show us more lenient with some of the policies they roll out for private educators, and then soft pedal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Through our association, because we have some associations that they can actually go through to get to some of the private school owners. Like I belong to the National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools, NAPS,
Okay.
Nigeria.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's good to know, and I'm sure that the people who you want to hear will hear you.
Definitely.
And finally, Mr. Shade, you are out of the system now, but there's still a lot of us who are there. So just say something to us that would make us, stay focused and keep doing our jobs.
Well, what I would rather say, stay focused, follow your passion and all that. But every worker today will one day become a retiree. And one thing that we're facing now, I was looking forward to retiring. But now when I got there, the reality now struck me that there's nothing. Nothing comes in at the end of the month. And I had to call on some of my colleagues that have been retired for over a year, and they still haven't received any of their emoluments. And I'm asking myself, the government, that's another thing that government needs to look into. Workers, it's bad enough that we're managing what we're getting, and then we're now retired, and it's still taking over a year, 6 months, and you're not getting anything. how are we supposed to survive?
Okay.
And that's why I find people doing things they shouldn't do while in service, because they know once they get out, they're going to suffer. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Chinera Shadi and Mrs. Adinrele Dimla, for being on the show today. I had a good time chatting with both of you, and I hope you did too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's been our show on the Medley today. I hope you learned a thing or two, just in case you're in the private or the public sector. I believe the Nigerian worker is the engine that drives the economy. So let's all do what we need to do to make sure that our country is better for it. My name is Tochi. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.